any questions? Oh, sorry, that's supposed to come at the end. My mistake. Hello. That's a better start. I'm Andy Zaltzman, the alleged comedian. I've come here to talk to you about electoral reform. Now, did you enjoy the general election last week? There, we have an indecisive response from the public. There we are. We're already satirising the subject. Do you like democracy? Let's do this by vote. Raise your hands if you do like democracy. Okay, raise your papers, even better, if you don't like it. Okay, so even in that vote, and all you had to do to express your opinion was take the trouble of lifting a single limb, we still only managed around about a 35% turnout. Shows how deep the rivers of apathy are coursing in this proud democratic nation. I love democracy a little bit too much, actually. I love it so much, I spoiled my ballot paper. I just thought it's done so much for us, it needs a bit of a treat, so I took it out for a nice meal, then onto a jazz club, then folded it into an origami swan and floated it down the Thames. But that's, of course, not what happened. What actually happened was that I got so overexcited at the thrill of voting that I just could not control myself in the polling station. I was charging around, shouting like a banshee. I ripped my shirt off. I slid over to the corner of the room on my knees in celebration and mimed voting on something. I don't know, I think it was the raw, primeval thrill of being allowed to write the letter X in a small box next to the name of someone I'd never actually heard of, thus expressing my heartfelt political opinions in the most meaningless, imprecise, and in a safe seat, ineffective way available. It was too much for me. I was overwhelmed by this maelstrom of democratic ecstasy. I sliced the end off my finger. I wrote an X in blood next to every single candidate on that ballot paper. I then flipped the ballot paper over, wrote out the names of the entire 1981 Ashes-winning England cricket team, and I voted for them as well. Fuck yeah, I screamed. This is why I fought all those world wars. 3 of them, 2 hot, 1 cold. I then attempted to jump into the ballot box and hibernate amongst the votes, but luckily someone tranquilised me by playing me a recording of Gordon Brown speaking. But on the plus side, there was a low turnout, so Graham Gooch is now my local MP. It's of course a long way to go for a Gooch joke, but I hope you enjoyed the journey. And of course, the irony is that Gooch actually had a very bad series in 1981 and, of course, ended up being dropped for the final test. But his legacy lives on. So, of course, that didn't actually happen either. What actually happened is that because we had to do so much tactical voting in this election, which in itself suggested the system is not entirely functioning, I did a vote swap. Did anyone here do a vote swap? Yeah, it's becoming increasingly popular. You find someone, if you're in a safe constituency or candidate can't win, you swap your vote with someone somewhere else. Now, I'm kind of, I guess, politically neutral in terms of party politics in this country, but I am really, really opposed to Islamic State. I think they're absolutely bang out of order. And I'm sorry if I offend any terrorist sympathisers in when I say that, but they are at best aggressive conversationalists. So I went online and I found a guy in Mosul in Iraq who's kind of ambivalent about Islamic State, but is a massive Nick Clegg fan, and so I voted Lib Dem for him, and he's going to try and vote Islamic State out next time they have an election over there. So we have to ask, is our electoral system working? Is it fit for purpose? This, of course, is a very appropriate building to do this in after what happened last week. It is the Tories' dream of a public building, in that it is now shut. And, of course, upstairs there's the courtroom. I believe Michael Gove came on a tour of it to see how he wants all courtrooms in Britain to be. I don't know if anyone works in the justice industry. Are you excited about having Gove as Justice Secretary? Because he split opinion as Education Secretary, pretty much into himself and education, and he had quite a kind of retro style about him. Seemed to be trying to get education back to when Britain was ruling the world, learning by rote. I think he was probably 1 month away from reintroducing corporal punishment and typhoid. It was very kind of quite old school kind of traditionalist when it came to education. Now he's taken over as Justice Secretary. Britain's witches are absolutely shitting themselves. But anyway, so on Friday, Britain awoke to a new dawn, as indeed it does every day. But this new dawn was different. It was an old dawn redawning itself because Britain had somewhat inadvertently become Tory again. Now, with 37% of the votes, the Conservatives got a majority in Parliament. That means 63% of votes were not for the Conservatives. 34% of people didn't even bother voting at all. So the maths, you add those two together, 63 plus 30. 97% of people did not vote for the Conservatives on those maths. So is this system working? And after weeks of build-up in which everyone had assumed Britain would be neither Tory nor Labour, the Conservative Party swept to what was objectively an underwhelming victory, but felt like a full dousing of Ed Miliband's head down the cruel toilet of history. Now, no one had expected it, apart from those people who had expected it, but the looks on the faces, when that exit poll was announced, the looks on the faces of the Labour and Liberal Democrat pundits on the telly, there was that mixture of disbelief and terror, the kind of look you would expect to see on the face of someone who's gone to the vet, put their cat box on the table, said to the vet, I'm afraid little Tiddles is really off his milk, I wonder if you can have a look at him. Opened up the cat box, reached in and pulled out a bundle of towels, some underpants and a bra, and then had that same face come onto their heads, that face that says, what on earth have I put in my tumble dryer? And that was the face that we saw on those Labour and Lib Dem pundits, very much the kind of face, you might say, on a lorry load of lambs that thinks it's being taken on a lovely day trip to the French seaside resort of Abattoir. The kind of face you might see on an ancient history enthusiast with a particular interest in Rome's battles with Carthage and the use of oversized animals in warfare, who thought he was going to a Hannibal lecture. But actually turned up to find a fictional flesh-eating psychopath tucking his napkin into his shirt saying, our good main course has arrived, waiter, nice Chianti please. So, as a nation, after all this happened in the post-electoral dawn, we were left asking the timeless political questions, what, how, why, and what the fuck? And above all, the question was asked, was that fair? Was it fair that 3.8 million UKIP voters and 1 million Green voters got only one MP each, whereas every single person in Scotland, I believe, has their own personal MP. Is that the kind of fairness that we want? And the answer to that question, was it fair, delivered by our unremittingly 18th century electoral system, was a hard, firm, do I look like I give a shit? Fairness, schmairness. If you can't stand the system, get out of the kitchen. So, now of course, the supporters of first past the post say, well, it gives us decisive government. Well, decisive government, not always good government, as the people of 1930s Europe would no doubt testify. And I guess, in a way, on the positive side, first past the post is ideal for our national psyche in Britain because it gives us the maximum chance of not voting for the winning party. And there we saw 76% of people didn't vote Tory. Blaire got massive majorities and around about 23% of the vote. So by not voting for the winning party, we give ourselves carte blanche to moan our British arses off for the next 5 years. This is the perfect system for us. But maybe we should look at the alternatives. Proportional representation instead of our current unproportional misrepresentation. PR, of course, has its pluses and minuses. On the plus side, everyone's vote counts. On the minus side, everyone's vote counts. And as we saw, everyone included the 3.8 million UKIP voters last week. Now, I mean, I know not all of them are lunatics, just most of the actual candidates, but not necessarily all of them. I'm strongly opposed to UKIP because I'm the son of an immigrant. My father moved to Britain from South Africa in the 1960s, although he did take the very sensible precaution of being white, so he got away with it. UKIP just kind of leave him alone. But I think maybe we can adjust within our current system, if we're that keen on first past the post. There are certain minor adjustments that could be made. For example, in the House of Commons, UKIP's one MP, Douglas Carswell, should be allowed to stand behind a kaleidoscopic prism, so it looks like there's loads of him. Alternatively, we could apportion the amount of speaking time per week according to vote share. So each Tory would only be allowed to speak for 1 minute 40 seconds every week. I would love to see David Cameron try to cram everything a Prime Minister has to say into 1 minute 40 seconds and still have time for condescending comments towards women. I'm not sure quite how he's going to cope. Whereas Carswell would have to bang on for 3 hours and 12 minutes non-stop. I think that could cut the UKIP surge at birth. Alternatively, we could divide, instead of dividing Parliament by seats proportionally under PR, we could just divide it by time and do away with the House of Commons and just have a proportional power timeshare. So you split up the 5-year electoral term according to the number of votes received. If you get 20% of the votes, you have total control of Parliament for 1 year, which means that fringe parties would only need 25,000 votes to win a day as the government and treat themselves to a 24-hour frenzy of madcap lawmaking. Now, it might not be what's best for this country, but it would make absolutely sensational television. And is that not what politics really needs? So, and you could factor in a low turnout. If there's only a 70% turnout, 30% of people would be represented by there being no government at all for 18 months. They have trialled it very successfully in Belgium, where not only did things go on fine when they had no government, but their football team reached the quarter-final of the World Cup. I think we would take that in this country. We would take that. Or it could be done by decibel. So Conservative MPs would only be allowed to whisper because they're over-representative. Liberal Democrats would be allowed to openly weep through a loudhailer, whilst Carswell will be forced to bark about immigration in Europe through a sound system borrowed from the notoriously loud rock band Motorhead. This is the future. This is the future. Alternatively, geography is outdated. Why do we still vote when everything is done virtually now? I think we need to modernise our system and have our constituencies not by where you live, but by the kind of person you are. So you do it by social subgroups. So you'd have an MP, for example, for career women who enjoy bingo, the environment and shouting. Or an MP for single men aged in their 40s who like golf but fear immigration. It would be a much more appropriate representation of what we think as a nation. Or we could just chuck the whole lot in and replace Parliament with a single computer wirelessly linked up to the brains of our top 3 tabloid newspaper editors. It is basically the system we already have, but cutting out the admin. But I think whatever happens, we need to demand more as voters, as a public. It's not enough just to write your X in a box every 5 years and then sit back and wait to see what you've actually voted for. George Osborne said the Conservatives had been given a mandate to get on with the work we started 5 years ago and follow the clear instructions of the British public, by which he meant the clear instructions of the English public, which is a different thing. The instructions of the Scottish public were certainly also pretty clear, and they rhymed with, "Go huck yourselves." So the fact is, the system is broken. David Cameron said as much in the campaign. He said, if you vote UKIP, you will get Labour. There was all the scaremongering about how Nicola Sturgeon was going to gallop down on a horse and burn down the walls of York, or whatever it was. She was like a true Scottish leader. And he was basically saying that our system doesn't work. And he said, so they need to rebuild trust. We don't trust our politicians. It's been broken for too long. I think we've considered our politicians play God. In the sense that they are no longer believed by the vast majority of the public anymore, haven't done anything demonstrably useful for absolutely ages. They seem to have developed an incredible ability to live in multiple places at the same time, and they keep employing members of their own family in influential positions. It's truly, I'm not saying that Jesus was not the best man for the job. I am saying it would have been nice if there'd been a little more transparency in the recruitment process. That's not too much to offer. And Cameron said this, on the important things, and this was his final pitch to us as voters, on the important things in life, the things that really matter, who do you really trust? Suggesting that we should vote for him rather than Miliband. Well, I couldn't vote. I don't trust Cameron on the only things that are really important to me in my life. I wasn't able to vote for Wisden Cricketer's Almanac or my mother, so I didn't have that option open. And there's in fact, the recent survey, a most trustworthy profession survey, politicians rated just below convicted con men. In another survey, 87% of people said they would rather be eaten by a crocodile than spoken to by an MP. And 87% of crocodiles said they'd rather go hungry than eat an MP. So I would say the The system is not functioning, but it comes down to us. If voting is, even under a fairer system, I'm not sure voting would be enough. You know, we have millions of ways of making our political voices heard now in the internet age. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to do that. But I do think, you know, if we are going to keep first past the post, and I will conclude with this, we need to have the courage of our political convictions and apply it across all areas of public life. In particular, I would like to see it applied in jury trials, where I believe you should be able to convict a defendant on a 3-9 minority verdict, provided that 4 of the jurors simply couldn't be asked to turn up to court, and the remaining 5 thought the defendant was definitely innocent, but for a range of slightly different reasons. This is the future Britain. Thank you very much. Now, do we have... Thank you. Any...